Welcome.
Thank you very much, Senator Sinowski, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stu Rosario, and I work with the American Chemistry Council. I'm here on behalf of our Plastics Food Service Packaging Group. I have testified before this committee on this issue many times. But for the record, I'm only here on the polystyrene foam issue. We do not represent plastic bags or bottled water. The gentleman who spoke before me talked about solid waste being his passion. Well, recycling is mine. I've been dealing with solid waste and recycling issues for the better part of 25 years now. Maybe the only person here who has actually walked the central landfill and walked also the largest landfill now closed, the Staten Island landfill. So I don't always wear a suit for my job. I have testimony. It's quite lengthy. I'm just going to highlight a few of the major points. First of all, we do support sustainability. We believe that polystyrene foam cups are actually a sustainable part of the equation. We think the carbon footprint is an important issue to be discussed in terms of our product. When you look at, we use less energy, we produce less greenhouse gases, we use less water, our material is lighter to transport, so trucks are using less fuel. I think if you look at all of that, it's a pretty good footprint, and we don't dismiss that. The several other issues that I'd like to raise is also landfills. As I mentioned, actually we have worked with Sarah Reeves, who used to be director of the recycling division at the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation. We've worked with her over the years. I know she's now in Vermont working, but we try to be part of the solution, and one of the things that our industry has done is create a coalition that actually this year is proposing grants. The deadline is the 17th, but there are always future opportunities. Again, part of the issue with recycling, and it's beyond our control. We can't tell municipalities to recycle, but when they do, and when they have problems, they usually contact us, and we're certainly around to help. The grant program is certainly one benefit. Another is just the technical resources that we bring both in-house, our plastics division, who has been dealing with recycling even longer than myself, or through our consultants. You heard a little bit about the litter issue. Again, we have consistently argued that that is a behavioral issue. San Francisco has banned polystyrene, and we cite their study. It didn't reduce litter. All it really did was replace one form of litter with another. So you still have that problem because the root cause, unfortunately, is us. We don't do the right things in terms of either recycling or throwing our garbage away. So in terms of the benefits, most legislation like this looks at end of life, meaning disposal. But everything that happens before end of life seems to be ignored, and that's some of the issues that I've raised. What we call life cycle analysis, cradle to grave, which means what are the resources that are being used as a raw material? Well, from a source reduction standpoint, a polystyrene cup or container is 5% material, 95% air. Compare it to all other materials, which are 100% material. So when you discard, and my job is not to beat up on paper or anyone else, but when you discard a paper cup versus a polystyrene cup, you're discarding 100% material. With the cup, 5% material, 95% air, and that's what gives it its insulation capacity. That's why water will stay cold or coffee will stay hot. Costs, Normally I don't like to talk about this, but since it's been raised, every study and every business owner that we've spoken to tells us that the alternatives are always 3 to 4 times more expensive. And for disclosure, some of my member companies make those alternatives, whether it's a compostable or biodegradable. But they cost more to produce. So that's why they are more expensive. Markets, recycling markets are very important. Actually, for most plastics, they're holding up pretty good in our current economic situation, including polystyrene. As a matter of fact, their recyclers are actually looking for more material, but they can't get enough of it. And one of the recyclers that I'm familiar with is right in New Jersey. He makes a lot of the crown moldings that you'll see in Home Depot or Lowe's. And that's just one example. There are many different examples of the products that these go into. Again, we would like to, there's a lot covered in my testimony. We're here to answer any questions and to be part of the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Pizarro? Giving us a lot of information here.
There's a lot to go
A
on.
lot to go into. Yes, Senator.
Just one question.
Mhm.
When you talk about percentages, are you talking about weight, volume, both? When you talk about 1.5%?
That is by weight, I
Yeah.
believe.
So styrofoam is understood to be very light.
Yes.
So it's, when you see out in places where litter is intense, you know, if you, part of my community includes Stillhouse Cove, which has cleanups all the time. Most of what we're cleaning up, it might not be the heaviest thing we're cleaning up, but by piece and volume, it's probably the most obvious and prevalent thing that we're picking up is styrofoam or the remains of styrofoam products. So describing something, I just want to bring that in as your statistics are built on weight. And what we are finding in cleanups, especially in sites that come from trash washing up on a shoreline, is that what's going out in the bay is predominantly plastic, and what's washing up is predominantly plastic. And more often than not, and most difficult to handle, because it's particulate quite often, is styrofoam. So I just want you to know that I have an issue going forward and looking at this issue and why we think styrofoam is such an important component that we try to control in it is for all of those issues and how those issues are presented. And the people who distribute and make the case for, and I know you're not talking about bags, you're talking about foam products. But you also made the case on the difference in cost on one versus the other to the retailer. So I happen to be a retailer, so I know a little bit about this. And so we use recyclable products, usually paper products, paper-based clamshells that are recyclable. And not only because we feel it's a good idea, and because we see the difference on our sidewalks and where we encounter litter, but because our customer doesn't want it. And so we want to give to our customers what they want, and they don't want their product for takeout delivered to them in a styrofoam container. And we do pay more for that. But when we talk about paying more for that, we're talking about a penny versus 5 pennies for a cup. We're talking about 25 cents for a clamshell for an entree versus a nickel for a styrofoam one. And so if we're charging $10 for a sandwich to go, we're not concerned with that nickel versus a quarter, because we're giving the customer what they want, and we have hopefully a profit, not in that 20 cents difference that we're worried about. And so I just, as a retailer, we're responding, and the styrofoam that we see, also in my environment, not my Stillhouse Cove, but my downtown environment, the styrofoam we see are from 1 or 2 retailers at the most. Customer demand has diminished styrofoam in McDonald's even, because the competitors were Burger King, and the customer did not want to see a foam container, and that for competitive reasons, never mind recycling reasons, they changed that. Almost everybody who sells a hot beverage, the remaining trash is 1 or 2. Everybody else has responded because they want to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And I think legislation is always to encourage the change that they see as important to their community and their environment. And I think that the styrofoam in particular is an important component of that momentum.
May I respond?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because you covered
Yeah.
3 different areas.
Yeah.
The first, I believe, and I don't recall if the testimony refers, we
Yeah.
actually, I believe 2 years ago, did a study on a litter study here in Rhode Island, and we picked several communities, some on the shore and some inland. And if I recall correctly, my memory is not as good as it used to be, but I believe that study showed that polystyrene or foam was not a major contributor to the litter. I made a note to make sure that I get a copy of that study to you. The second point is I'm glad that you talked about choice, because I think part of what we are talking about here is choice. Your customers want something. I myself, as a customer, I like polystyrene. When I have Chinese takeout food, I usually have to walk quite a number of distance back to my office, and it stays warm. So that's my choice. And there are certain stores that I don't go to because they don't provide polystyrene. I won't say which. You'll know which ones they are.
Yeah.
The last is cost. Obviously, if I'm a customer at your store and that's what I prefer, I'm willing to incur that extra cost. You heard the earlier presentation for a family that is going hungry. That nickel is going to make a big difference when they go into a store and purchase something. So again, I understand that there are balances here that we all have to find, but I think we have to really look at the big picture.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Always good seeing you.
Always
Thank
good
you.
seeing you, and if you can forward that other information,
I will.
the statistics.